Today I'd like to tell you a happy story about a little Yorkie named Mickey that I helped recently. Mickey taught me so much about love and about death and about animal rights that I want to share that with you. Initially, Mickey's mother became very ill, and there was a question about an end-of-life decision for him, a decision to euthanize a dog when the owner becomes very ill. Fortunately, the owner found out about the Yorkie Rescue of America, and they all had a phone conversation and decided that Mickey would go with the Yorkie Rescue and have a new family. While a decision was being made about Mickey, he had been placed in his vet's office for boarding, and he'd been there about 5.5 weeks. So when the Yorkie Rescue went to pick up Mickey, they were shocked at the condition. He hadn't been bathed, his toenails hadn't been clipped, so initially they rejected him. As time seemed of the essence at that time, I volunteered to contact the vet, have the dog groomed, and go pick up Mickey and take him to his new foster family. I'd never met Mickey before, so it was an exciting day for me, and I'd contacted the vet. I asked if he could be bathed and cleaned up, and I wanted to prepare him with a new little sweater so that the foster mom would welcome him. When I met Mickey, he literally jumped from the staff member's arms to me, and the videos you're watching right now are his first steps on the ground after being in the little cage for about 5.5 weeks. You can see he's very thin. He's losing some hair on the back, and he's so happy just to be outside and on the ground again. So these are the early videos when we picked him up and prepared for him to meet his new foster mom. This was such a happy day for me. I only met Mickey for about 15 minutes, but bought a little card for his new mom that says, "Excuse me, would you mind very much if I gave you a it'll be okay hug?" And we dressed him in his new little sweater, and we prepared to drive 30 minutes or so over to the foster mom. At that time, as far as we knew, his health was fine. He had some anxiety and was on anti-anxiety medicine, and he barked a little bit when he was alone, and so they were considering Prozac, but otherwise Mickey seemed fine. He was a little thin, but I remember on that day how happy he was to be outside. As I watched him play in the grass, knowing he'd been caged for about 5.5 weeks, he reminded me of a little deer just leaping. He was just so joyful that afternoon when we picked him up and got ready for the transport. Now, as you watch this encounter that we had with Mickey, I want you to consider this. What are the animal's rights to live or die? I ask myself this question because I've been an advocate in my career for persons with severe physical challenges and intellectual disabilities. So I looked up principles of veterinarian medical ethics. And since veterinarians are members of scholarly professions, I wondered what the requirements are for them to earn their academic degree. And it was pretty interesting because euthanasia basically is to relieve suffering of the animal, but it also states that it's for the benefit of the client. And so I am so grateful that I found out about this Yorkie rescue, and I feel a little bit humbled and sad that I am not more aware of animal rights because I've spent so much time perhaps focusing on human rights. I'm going to write an essay about animal rights. You can refer to that if you'd like. But back to this story. That was such a happy day. And we drove over, we met the foster mom, and this is me presenting Mickey to her, telling him goodbye. As I said, I only saw him maybe 15 minutes, and I was so happy for his life. These are some picture she sent of him settling in his new home, her home, while he was being prepared to go on a transport in a week or so to the north to foster parents that were going to adopt him. There he was settling in for the night. He took a walk with other Yorkies that she also fostered. Here he's nesting in his bed, and he's in a special big bed that she had in her home. And here he is that evening. I want you to notice his hair on the back near his hips. This is a photo before he went to the vet for boarding, and this is a photo after. You can see his hair loss, and that worried his foster mom when she noted that. Now, the foster mom had already arranged to take Mickey to her vet the next day for a full checkup. I received a call on Friday, a conference call, that Mickey was a very sick little guy. Tiffany Cartosian, the founder and president of Yorkie Rescue of America, described multiple problems. I can't even remember all now that they said. This was an urgent time. The lab results were terrible, and Tiffany suggested we might take him to VCA West Los Angeles, an animal hospital, urgent care that she'd used before. There was no guarantee, and our other choice was perhaps, sadly, to make an end-of-life decision for Mickey. So this was Mickey's second time that he was near death's door. We decided that it was worth a try for the emergency animal hospital and ICU and critical care to see exactly what could happen, what Mickey's chances were. So we found the funds, and they rushed over that Friday night to take him to the animal hospital. After extensive testing in ICU and critical care at the hospital in Los Angeles, we learned it wasn't the organ failure and the concerns that we had. In fact, he had contracted a parasite, and the parasite, we think, had been with him for probably most of the 5.5 weeks that he was in the vet in Irvine. 2 points I would like to make here. One, there was no comparison in medical care. And I'm going to write an essay about veterinarians, also separate. Secondly, Mickey, by going to the emergency vet hospital in LA, lived. And we could have, by his symptoms alone, have made an end-of-life decision that evening because we didn't want to have the expense to put him in urgent care in an animal hospital. But by making that decision, not only did we have the correct diagnosis, but I believe Mickey's life was saved. Now you need to know during this critical time, look at the extensive medication that he needs, but look at the positive energy and fun with which it's delivered. I love this certificate of bravery because he has a new name. He has a new life. And most people might argue, was it worth the cost? And I would argue, absolutely. Why is this experience so important to me? Because people were arguing behind the scenes that he was not worth the money, that it had to stop. And I ask you, these little people, these little animals that greet us daily and are gifts from God, what is their value? And these are ethical decisions about expense. And I myself have had to re-examine the expense of a pet and what I'm willing to pay for their love. One could make the argument that perhaps I'm too emotionally involved in Mickey's life. Maybe that's true, but because I've faced death and dying, I wonder about our pets and what rights they have. And are they only here for our convenience? Or do we have the obligation to see them through their death, whether it's convenient for us or not? I'm so grateful to the rescue groups for animals, and I really want to look into what proportion of animals are supported by these various rescue groups and what percentage of animals aren't, and they're neglected and abused and discarded and thrown away and euthanized. So after about 5 days in the hospital in urgent care, Mickey was able to go home. He's now back with his foster mom and doing very well. Tiffany and Ellen provide regular updates. I call myself his auntie. Here's the first evening Ellen slept on the sofa with him. Here's a couple days ago she gave him a fresh bath, and these are wearing some hand-me-down pajamas that she fixed to size. Today he's at work with her. Here he's laying in front of a heater, getting warm, and all is well. I have such gratitude that I was able to participate in rescuing Mickey. And I hope that Mickey's story will impact your life in a positive way as it has mine.